Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee on Thursday the 20th of March 2025. This meeting has been live streamed and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. I agree to the remote participation of members in this meeting, and I would ask that all members and members of the public either switch their mobile phones off or ensure that they are switched to silent. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you join the meeting so we can keep track of whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by a roll call. Members, can we confirm? I'll ask Tracy to take us through the procedure for today, and then we'll go to the remainder of the agenda afterwards. So you take us through the procedure, please. We'll get Cedric and apologies first, please.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. Morning, members. We've got 16 members present in total, 5 members present in person here at Council HQ, being the Chair, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Maureen Johnston, Councillor Slater and Councillor Thompson, and 11 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Beretti, Councillor Blake, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Davies, Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Hill, Councillor Jordan, Councillor Lowe, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Marshall and Councillor Walters. I've got 3 apologies from the Vice Chair, Councillor Ian Crothers and Councillor Howie, and not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Dryborough. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Are there any declarations of interest, members? I have a number. I have Councillor Hislop in the hall, then Councillor Marshall, followed by Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Hislop, please.
Chair, 2 declarations of connection. The applicant in item 4 was a former councillor, so I know him, and his wife was a nursery teacher for my youngest son, so I know them, but I don't think it's close enough that I need to leave the room. And item 6, Mr. and Mrs. Crothers, the applicants, they're also councillors in the same group as them.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Councillor Marshall, please.
Yes, sorry, Chair, it was to come in on the previous item just to tender Councillor Dryborough's apologies to the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Drysdale, please.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I would like to declare a connection with item 4 and 6 as well, please, concurring with Councillor Hislop, because we have connections with those applicants because they've been councillors, but I will remain in the room and part of the debate for those 2 items. I'd also like to declare a connection with item 5. Whilst I do not know the applicant, I do know the landowners and have a close connection with them. So I will not partake in the debate, but I will remain in the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Lynn Davis, please.
Good morning, Chair. I'd like to lodge a statement of connection with item number 6, obviously, because Miss Karen and Ian Crothers are both councillors in my group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hill, please.
Same as Councillor Davis for me, a connection with item 6, as Karen and Ian are both members of our group. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Blake, please.
It's probably reluctantly similar for 4 and 6, although I wouldn't have thought it would have been a statement of connection. We've had many other members have put applications in that's fairly obvious that we have a connection with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Marshall, please.
Yeah, I think Councillor Blake has made the point I wanted to make. It the fact that the item 6, the reason why it is before the planning committee is because you know, they are elected members. Then that's not the first time that we've had such reports. So I'm just looking for governance advice. I wouldn't, you know, or that means that all the committee would have to make a statement of connection.
I will ask our Governance Officer Tracy to give all members advice on this matter. Tracy, please.
Thanks, Chair. If I do recall, we have previously indicated in minutes that all members who sit on the Planning Applications Committee know the applicant as a colleague and a councillor. So I can do that as just a blanket on the minute for everybody so that everyone's covered for item 6. Thanks, Chair.
Members are content with that, I presume. It's just a blanket coverage and that will satisfy every Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just in my case to add the statement of connection for item 4 as a former council colleague who, to that extent, I would know them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are there any other members looking to make a declaration? In that case, we'll proceed with the agenda. Can you outline the procedure before today, Tracy, please? I was going to do the minutes later, but Tracy's keeping me right. So next agenda item, minute for noting. No, it's for approval, actually, no noting. It's for approval. Is that a true record, members? Members in the hall have agreed.
Yes.
And
yes.
Members online have agreed, so thank you very much for that. We now come to procedure. Can you outline the procedure for the day, please, Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues, accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chair has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chair will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and such members should withdraw from the meeting after making their presentation, and then applicants or their agents. Representatives were offered the option of attending today's meeting in person, joining remotely through Microsoft Teams, or to provide a written statement to be read out on their behalf. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chair will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy. We move on to agenda item number 4. An application for the erection of dwelling house, Class 9, and installation of air source heat pump at the now Barhill Road, Dalbeattie. This is a full application, reference number 24/2297/full. The recommendation is to refuse, and our case officer is Claire Ingram. Before I ask Claire to make a presentation, Mr. Sutty would like to provide an update to members.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to draw your attention to the list of supporters on page 23 of your papers. It's listed as 9. There was, in fact, another one which we did catch in time to notify, but wasn't mentioned specifically in the report, I'm afraid. And that's Mrs. Susan Aitchison James of the Now. And so she is actually registered to speak, so there's no disadvantage there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. We now come to a presentation first from Claire Ingram. Claire, can you take us through the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. This application, as previously mentioned, is for the erection of a dwelling house at the Now Bar Hill Road in Dalbeattie. The site is within the town of Dalbeattie, which is a district centre in the Stewartry housing market area. This site has previously been granted planning permission in principle, subject to conditions, most recently under 2013-95 planning in principle, and the site also forms part of planning permission for the overall Bar Hill development infrastructure. It is identified as plot 7 within the 22747 full application. Under the scheme of delegation, this application requires to be considered by the Planning Applications Committee as more than 6 separate individual and timelessly received third-party objections on material planning grounds have been received. So this slide is our 1 to 1250 site location plan, indicating the proposal site outlined in red. The Bar Hill Road is just to the south of the plan, and the private access lane runs vertically just to the right of the centre.
Sorry, Chair, can I interrupt, please? Sorry to interrupt. All we've got is a view of the chair and Mr. Sutty. We're not seeing any of the plans or the speaker. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to second that. Now the location plan has come up, Chair.
Okay, how do you deal with this, David? Abby? Done. Okay. That's it, done, folks. Can you continue, Claire, please? Or do you want to maybe start again?
Yep,
please,
certainly.
that might be helpful.
This is our 1 to 1250 site location plan. It's indicating the proposal site outlined in red. The Bar Hill Road is to the south of the plan, and the private access lane runs vertically just to the right of the centre and accesses the site from the north. The land within the applicant's ownership are indicated in blue. Our next slide is a block plan of the site, indicating the proposed location of the dwelling house outlined in red. The area of grey surrounding the house site is indicated as being hardcore chips, and surrounding this are the boulders which currently exist on the site. Trees to be retained are indicated as the lime circles for beech and green circles for pine. Here we can see the access in more detail in this plan to the north of the site. There's a solar array proposed for the site frontage on the slope, and it is indicated by the black rectangle. 4 car parking spaces are indicated within the site to the rear of the proposed dwelling. The foul drainage is indicated by the light orange line surrounded by the red, which extends to the west of the site, and a waste collection point is indicated in yellow on the shared drive to the south of the dwelling house. Moving on to slide 4, this slide shows the 1 to 100 elevation plans of the proposed dwelling house. The house is 2.5 stories with a height of 9.79 metres with a pitched roof and has a frontage of 8.3 metres. It is set back 10 metres from the front of the site. There are no precise details of the proposed finishes on the plans, but the supporting statement indicates that the walls would be finished in a render painted dark with dark grey tiles and dark grey windows, doors and rain goods. A balcony across the entire southwest elevation at first floor level is proposed. This slide indicates the site section at 1 to 100 of the western elevation of the proposed dwelling. The next one is the 1 to 100 floor plans of the proposed dwelling. The floor plans indicate a 4-bedroom dwelling house over 2.5 stories with a first floor balcony for the frontage of the living room. Moving on to photos now. The photos in this slide show the frontage of the proposed site. To the left of the 2 dwellings at the Knowe and the Firs are at similar elevation, and the photo is taken looking in a northeasterly direction from the level of the Bar Hill Road. The next slide here is just indicating photos of the site. They're taken from the front of the site looking in a mainly westerly direction, indicating the boulders at the boundary of the Knowe, and you can see the mature trees, a band of trees to the rear of the site. The next photo, the photo to the left, is taken from the rear of the access to the site, looking in an easterly direction to the shared laneway. And the photo to the right is taken from the rear of the site, looking in a southwesterly direction, indicating the laneway access to the level portion of the site. Let's go back to our elevation. So as I mentioned before, this application is brought before you as there have been more than 6 separate individual and timelessly received objections on material planning grounds. The principle of development for a dwelling house on this site has long been established, most recently through Planning Permission 2020-1395 Planning and Principle. However, no application for approval of matters specified by conditions has ever been made. So this application is seeking full planning permission. Since the previous application on the site was approved, NPF 4 has been adopted. Obviously our policies here are policy 16A, LDP policy H1, and supports development sites such as these. So the principle on the site is therefore considered acceptable. Turning to the design and finishes of the proposed dwelling, the originally submitted plans indicated a proposed dwelling of 10.1 metres in height with a steep pitched roof, strong vertical emphasis and a frontage of 8.5 metres. Finishes were detailed to be dark render with dark roof tiles and rain goods, and the proposed dwelling had a significant front terrace and balcony area, which was more prominent due to the form and proportions of the design. The form, proportions and orientation of the dwelling did not relate well to the surrounding area and was therefore considered to be contrary to LDT policy OP2. The form of the proposed dwelling with this vertical emphasis, steep roof pitch and gable end fronting the site did not respect the character of the neighbouring built forms. Following a discussion and advice that the original plans were unacceptable, amended plans, which can be seen in slides 4, 5 and 6, were submitted on the 6th of March 2025, indicating a slight reduction in the height of the dwelling to 9.7 metres and a reduction in the roof pitch to 40 degrees. However, our concerns in relation to the form, orientation and proportions of the 2.5-storey dwelling in this elevated position still remain. And the amended plans received, which we can see there, did not adequately address our concerns. And accordingly, the proposal was considered to be contrary to LDP policy OP2, the related supplementary guidance and NPF 4 policy 14. So the application has been recommended for refusal as it's contrary to the LDP2 policy OP2, the related supplementary guidance and NPF 4 policy 14, in that the design, height and finishes of the proposed 2.5-storey dwelling house in an elevated position do not relate well to the scale, character and appearance of the surrounding area.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions at this stage for our case officer? Councillor Beretti, Tony, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Claire. Could you put back up an image of the composite that you showed with the other buildings that were in that location, please?
Claire.
Yeah, that's the one. Thanks very much. Right, not knowing this particular site, Claire, how old would you put these other buildings to be? Because one of them looks like almost like a traditional bungalow. I can't see the others, which is why I'm asking, what would you give the specific dates, roughly, that you say some of these other buildings have been built?
I wouldn't be able to give specific dates, but I would, as a rough estimate, I would probably say maybe 1930s, although there is a mixture of dwelling houses there, but 1930s possibly.
Would you say that there are any relatively new buildings within that site? Because this is a very limited representation of what's actually going to be there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as mentioned previously, this site also forms part of the planning permission for the overall Bar Hill development infrastructure area. There are new homes just at this particular location where the photo is taken. There's a new just to the left. There's a relatively modern dwelling house there. So there are a mixture of dwelling houses, but predominantly from this aspect, on approaching the site, this would be the critical viewpoint, and we can see that the surrounding character is mainly sort of 1930s traditional dwelling homes.
All right, okay, thank you very much, Claire. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Tony. Any other questions for our case officer? Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I note that you've stated that the application does not meet well with LGP2, OP2 and NPF4 policy 14, and this relates to scale, density, massing, character, appearance and use of materials. As an officer, what would you say is the most crucial part of this application that the planning department find difficult to take on board? Is it the fact it's 2.5 stories, so it's a height issue? Is it the appearance of the grey rather than perhaps what's slightly more coordinated, in my opinion, might be a lighter colour? Or is it the massing, character and appearance? So is it all of those? If I could be through yourself, Chair, if it's possible to ask these questions, is it the combination of all of them, or is it just one or two, is my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Claire?
Yeah, I think you're correct at the end. It's a combination of all of them. The height in itself is not to the particular detriment of the application, but with the strong vertical emphasis and the form, it accentuates the height of the dwelling. So we think with the gable end fronting the site, along with the steep roof pitch and the form of the dwelling house, I think it's the combination of all those factors. Obviously, yes, and also in connection with the proposed dark finishes, which we feel are out of character for the area.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Pauline. Any other questions for our case officer? In that case, we'll move to the registered speakers. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with the process and some won't. So the process is that there's a list with me of the time applications to speak were made. So I'll invite each of you in the turn that we received the request. You will be restricted to a 3-minute window to make your presentation. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw your presentation to a conclusion. And those that are in person speaking, I'd ask if you'd wait in case any members have questions for you before you retire back to your seat. And any statements that are read out will simply be noted by members. There'll be any questions about that. So we'll move forward to the first registered speaker, who is James Fitties, the objector. It's a statement to be read out by our clerk. So, Tracy, please.
Chair. James Fitters, objector. I wish to formally object to this planning application on the following grounds. 1. Increased risk of flooding. The Barnhill area already suffers from significant flooding issues. The removal of substantial vegetation and woodland to prepare this site, combined with the introduction of impermeable surfaces such as the house's roof and driveways, will further exacerbate surface water runoff. Given the site's location and the history of insufficient drainage in the area, this development poses a serious flood risk to surrounding properties, including Linwood, and may impact local watercourses and ecosystems. It is essential that a full and comprehensive flood risk assessment is undertaken with a clear strategy to make runoff and prevent further flooding, ensuring the safety of existing properties and the surrounding environment. 2. Impact on local character and visual amenity. The proposed house is out of keeping with the character of the surrounding area. Its height, 2.5 stories, and use of dark materials will significantly alter the visual landscape, impacting sight lines and the aesthetically integral of the neighbourhood. Existing residents will experience a loss of privacy as the proposed balcony will overlook private gardens. Given the controversy surrounding the recent constructed house on Barnhill Road, Barlinia developed, already regarded as incompatible with the area, it is considering that yet another development is proposed in a style that does not align with the established character of this beautiful area. 3. Incompatibility with the local plan. The proposed development does not align with the local development plan's policies. 4. Drainage and environmental impact. The applicant's proposal to direct runoff to natural ground on site raises serious concerns about flooding and soil erosion, particularly given the recent removal of woodland. If a main sewer connection is available, as appears to be the case with nearby properties such as the Firs and the Now, then best practice would dictate that the new development also connects to it. eliminating the need for reed beds and waste tanks. Furthermore, past incidents suggest a troubling precedent. Local residents have already suffered damage due to water being redirected from woodland. Given these past actions and the natural downhill flow of water, anyone situated below this development is at significant risk of future flooding and property damage. So in conclusion, for the reasons outlined above, flooding risks, incompatibility with local character, failure to adhere to existing planning policies and environmental concerns, I strongly urge the committee to reject this application unless these crucial issues can be addressed properly.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I should also have said at the outset that if any of the statements go beyond the 3-minute window, they'll be terminated at 3 minutes, and that's in the interest of fairness for everybody else's presentation or making a presentation in person. So the next statement is from Jill Catterwell, a supporter, and it's a statement read out by Tracy.
Chair, yes, Jill Catterwell, supporter. Unfortunately, I cannot attend the meeting due to previous commitments and would ask this statement to be read out. Living for 20 years at Woodside Farm and still walking frequently in the Barnhill Wood, I am very familiar with this area. The area has in fact changed markedly over time. There are several new houses along the track towards Woodside Farm and Barnhill Road itself, and has a variety of ages of property, a fact reflected in their styles. There are a lot of new houses, and I think that the house proposed would blend very well into the area. The 4 houses one sees when looking towards the plot from roughly outside the park gates are not all of the same construction, and I consider that this house would look perfectly fine on the site. It would be set back from the road beside existing ones which are at a higher level and would blend in well, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you. The next registered speaker is Kevin Gibson. He is a supporter and he is appearing in person. Kevin, just a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw it to a conclusion. And if you'd be kind enough to wait in case members have questions for you, I'd be grateful. Just whenever you're ready, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm the 3rd generation of Gibsons who's been building houses in the Dalbeattie area. When I first started working with my father, he employed 30 men, full-time. Most of his business was building bespoke houses. My father used to be able to talk with a planner. He could then shake hands with the customer, confident that he could get their dream home through within a reasonable time. Today things are very different. My last 11 houses, I've used one standard design. Then I try to sell them. Even doing this very simple way, I have one application at Barnbarach that is now almost into its 5th year. David and I have submitted an application for another 18 houses in Palnackie. I do understand the planning are under a lot of pressure, and Claire's job is not easy, but it is also very difficult for us. We have been assigned planning officer, and this guy works in Athens. I'll say that again, Athens. This is very, very difficult. We grew up together, and David's one of the few people that I trust. He's put a lot of effort into finding places where we can build together. He's a range of skills that I do not have. This is a potential game changer for my business. I'm 60 years of age. I've been out in all weathers. I'm now at a fork in the road. I can bang my head against the wall for another couple of years and then retire. Or I can encourage my daughter and my son-in-law to be the 4th generation. They're talented young people working in construction in England. I feel we could put millions back into the local economy, building bespoke houses in an exciting is exciting and good people want to work with you.
You have 30 seconds to go.
David has spent a lot of time on this. I've spent a lot of time on this. We've looked at it in different ways. I cannot see any other way of putting this house on that site, down to the topographical nature of the site. And I personally think it fits in well, and I'll be proud to build that house. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr Gibson? Councillor Hislop, followed by David Slater. Councillor Slater.
You addressed one of the points, which was how to build it on the site, because there was issues with regard to the main frontage being facing the road. Why did you pick this palette of colours, and is it set in stone, or is there an opportunity to look at that again?
Well, we thought it blended in a bit more doing the dark colours, but it'd be a simple process to make it white. I mean, we're easy to, all these things that have been negative about the drainage and everything, you know, we're not building our first house. We're good at this. We've been doing it for a long time, and we will address all these issues.
Thank you. Councillor Slater, David Slater. Microphone, David, please. Still no on.
It's now okay. Right. Regarding your representation here, I feel that was more like an advert than anything else. That's the way I've read that, I must admit.
Yeah.
It's an advert for business as such. That's the way I felt that your presentation was put towards us today. Thank you.
We're wanting business. We're wanting Dumfries and Galloway to grow.
Thank you. Councillor Barretti, Tony, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I quite picked this up, but can you explain to me why or how you're dealing with someone from Athens and exactly what is it that they were doing, and why, or have you had discussions with the case officer here, Claire Ingram?
It's nothing to do with this planning application. It was just something that I found out last week, that our planning officer is working from home, and his home is in Athens, which kind of makes things a wee bit complicated for us, but it's nothing to do with Claire.
So this particular application you've dealt with specifically with Claire?
No, Mr. James has been dealing with Claire.
Right, okay, no, thank you very much.
I'm just going to build. I'm going to build for them.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Barretti. I have Councillor Drysdale, followed by Councillor Stephen Thompson. Pauline Drysdale, please.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Oh, that should be it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Can I just ask, it's commendable that you are looking to keep the economy moving in Dumfries and Galloway. I reside in Ward 4, which is quite close to Dalbeattie. I'm assuming that yourself and Mr. James, quite rightly so, have probably done a bit of research with regards to the size of the property that you're intending to put forward, that you've put forward to the planning committee. And it looks to be a house that would be suitable for a family. Is that what you've been discovering is a requirement in the ward that you're planning to build at the moment? Thank you.
Yes, especially in Palnaki. We have a school that's very close to closing, and we're keen to get on with that, but it's been made hard for us, and it's not the planners' fault. We should be working together. Developers and the planners and the builders should all be pulling in the same direction.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thanks for the presentation. It's just a question on I suppose, the character of the existing developments in that area. So we saw from the slides, etc., and if we've been to the area, we might have seen this already as well, but a lot of the existing houses are 1.5 storey. The one that you're proposing, although there's no disputing the principle of development at the site, because that's been agreed, but the proposal in front of us is one that's 2.5 storeys. So I'm just sort of wondering, was there a reason why you felt that we'll go against the spirit of NPF 4 policy 14 for this type of house rather than build one that's more like the ones that are already there? Thank you.
We're not trying to go against anyone. People are wanting to build their dream house. You know, it's David and Susan only got married last year. This is something they want to do. People, when they build a house, they want to put their stamp on it. They want to try and do something wonderful to live in. And I don't think it's out of keeping, personally. And we tried to keep it, as in, make it fit in. And I personally believe it does fit in. I would be pleased to see that house built.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. If there are no other questions for Mr Gibson, thanks very much for coming forward, sir. You can resume your seat again. The next representation is Mark Harper. I support the statement read out by Tracy or Clark.
Chair, yes, Mark Harper, supporter. I am a digger driver and ground worker, and it can be a hard job, but I love it. Like any business, there are ups and downs. In 2012, a couple of people did not pay me and I went bankrupt. I had to save up for years so I could start out on my own again. As a friend, David has helped me a bit with admin. These days, I am much more careful who I work for. I do a lot of work for David and Kevin. My brother and I worked on the shaping of the plot that we are talking about today. David told me that planning would prefer the house turned around 90 degrees to match his house and the one beside. Unfortunately, this is not realistic. Those houses were built on the broad top of the edge of Barn Hill. This plot is cut into the side. Elon Musk could maybe do something with a huge budget, his big chainsaw and a team of planning lawyers, but there would have to be a massive underbuild and a lot more trees would need to come down. And it is difficult to see how there would be space for a car, let alone his Cybertruck. I have lived in Dalbeattie all of my life. Barn Hill was always the area for bigger individual houses on the edge of the woods. I have looked at the house design and I think it would be a really good addition to the town and would ask you to please pass it.
Thanks, Tracy. Our next registered speaker is Susan H. St. James, a supporter appearing in person. Susan, the same arrangement will apply. Just whenever you're ready, make your presentation. I will remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw it to conclusion. And if you're kind enough to wait in case you have questions for you, I'd be grateful. Just whenever you're ready, Susan.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to put our case to our elected councillors, and I thank you for allowing me to speak today. When we first got input from planning, David spoke to an expert who told us that our first design was appropriate and he shouldn't change it. I, on the other hand, said, just make whatever changes you want. David loves planning and was enthusiastic to make amendments, reports and make diagrams. We know achieving your dream home means making compromises. Eventually, in an online meeting, it became clear the planners wanted the house rotated 90 degrees. I like the sun. I love the sun. If there was any way we could turn the house to have the broadest side to the south, believe me, we would have done that. Slide 1, please. On my early morning walks, when I come out of Dalbeattie Park onto Bark Hill Road, half the houses I can see present gable ends. The far plot is, and you can see in this slide, is plot 5. It is a similar distance away as our proposal is. It was passed in 2023 and has a strong southern gable. That house was made in a Polish factory and was transported here on 8 Arctic trucks that took 4 days to get here. We want to use a low-waste Alexander's integrated panel kit, cut from locally sourced Galloway timber and built by the likes of Kevin, Gary, Lewis, and me. I want to do this. Slide 2, please. Sorry, I'm getting a wee bit emotional. Across from our road is Glenairley and its neighbour Gilberton, a low bungalow. The juxtaposition is significantly greater than our current house and the one we are proposing to build. Our plot will only be seen by the walkers, and since Storm Owen, we have let them walk through our garden to access the woods. Those who come by car, we let park on our land, grace and favour. And during the notification period, we put up a colour picture of what we were prosing for all to see. And the only responses we got were wishes of good luck to us. I have lived in Dalbeattie all my life. I was first on this site when David and I walked down to the fair many years ago.
30 seconds to go, Susan.
Roll on 50 years, and in all that time, I've only seen a few people, local people manage to build their own homes. We just want to build our special forever home. And when David said we can build it, I said this will never happen because things don't happen to people like me. And I'm now 66, and this is probably my last chance to be proven wrong. I hope the councillors will support our application. Thank you.
Thanks very much for being spot on 3 minutes, Susan. Are there any questions for Susan before she leaves the table? No, thank you for presenting, Susan. Thank you. Next is Gary Jones, a supporter, and Clark has a statement to read out from Gary. Whenever you're ready, Tracy, please.
Chair, Gary Jones, supporter. When I go into Dumfries Centre, I get worried about the state of my hometown. We need more enthusiasm to get people working and investing. In Dalbeattie, David renovated a dilapidated 4-storey building opposite the post office. He ended up losing a lot of money on it, but he can look at it as a big contribution to the centre of his hometown. Roxand Wales will be a real boost for Dalbeattie. The magnificent old school was built when people were not afraid of strong architecture. At the moment, I am working for Susan restoring an empty granite property just across the road from Roxand Wales. She is a hard worker and has been on the tools with me from 7 a.m. At these renovations, David and Susan have really respected the character of the old buildings. When David showed me the first plans for the new house, I was excited and started making calculations. It is my ambition to build houses like that. Being part of a new development, I did not expect that it would be difficult to get the design passed. David has made a lot of changes, and it is now positioned where almost no one will see it. Personally, I think that's a pity. Even though the style has been watered down a bit, it will still be a great house, and it would be good if more people could see it. My uncle's business does quite a bit of work with Kevin Gibson, but it is sporadic. David has shown me some of the plans that he and Kevin have. If they can build these developments, there will be more continuation of work. Everyone could be more secure and invest in their future. One day I want to build my own house, and I just think if you can approve this, it will give us all a confidence lift. We had to take time off to come today, but it's been a good experience for me and my workmate Lewis. And thanks for letting me say my piece.
Thank you, Tracy. Next registered speaker is Bridget Penman. Bridget, if you'd like to come forward, please. Same arrangement, 3 minutes. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw a presentation to conclusion. And if you can wait, I'd be grateful. Whenever you're ready, Bridget.
As David's sister, I was part owner of the ground 10 years ago when we obtained planning permission in principle for the second time. I know this isn't the same as full permission, but when we applied for planning in principle, we were asked to provide a sketch showing the design. We submitted a house design just like this one and got the permission. Since then, David has been able to get more ground and the house position is much more secluded. It's also much smaller relative to the size of the plot than it was in 2014, so I don't really understand what the problem is this time. Colour isn't the most important thing, however, of the three closest houses, one is grey granite and another is salmon pink. There's a spectacular new house in Hardgate, just 3 miles away, which is at the end of a row of white houses. I know this is one reason why David and Susan wanted their house to be charcoal. I think it would have looked amazing. However, having been told that theirs has to be white, David and Susan have tried to compromise by suggesting grey to match the beech trunks. They can accept white, but it's not very practical when you're amongst the trees. I could understand if David and Susan had dug their heels in, but they have tried everything to make this happen. They own other undeveloped plots near the site, so they certainly wouldn't want anything to detract or spoil the area. A lot of the big houses in Dalbeattie were built during the Depression to keep people in work, and I'm not saying this is the same situation today. However, private house building is really slowing down, and this is local people trying to do a local project. Surely there can be a spirit of compromise here to make this happen. David and Susan are newlyweds looking for a new start in later life. Please, can you help them make this happen? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Any questions for Bridget? Thank you for coming forward. The last registered speaker is David James, the applicant, appearing in person.
Chair. Yeah, sorry, I had my hand
Tony?
up. I don't know if it was noted.
Councillor
I do want to. Yeah. Is Bridget still at the chair?
I've invited the lady back, so whenever you're ready for a question, Tony.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bridget. Now, you said that, and colour has clearly, presentation of the colour has been mentioned here quite a few times now. You looked at various colours and you've come to this conclusion, or David came to this conclusion about this grey to fit in with the surrounding foliage or the trees that were already on site. Is there any, would you say that that was a very deliberate, or have you actually spoken with other maybe advisors on ecology to see whether or not they would agree or disagree with what that's the way that's been done?
I'm not aware of that. I think they just chose it because they thought that would blend in best with the environment, so it was less obtrusive. But I know they would compromise and go for white if that would make the difference to having the house built.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks very much for that answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Beretti. Thanks, Bridget. You can go this time. Thank you. Last registered speaker, David James, the applicant. David, you've been here before. I'm sure you'll know the rules well. Just 3 minutes whenever you're ready. I'll remind you 30 seconds to go, and if you can wait, it'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. Slide 3. You will see the proposal in the centre. It's 110 metres away. Including the granite house down to the left, the 3 existing houses all have truncated roofs. We offered to vary the roof type, but planning very reasonably indicated that that was not desired. Slide 4. When the planned houses on Bar Hill Road are built, they will obscure the proposal. The proposal is in the roof of the middle one. Slide 5. The first bungalow has been built and does obscure the proposal, shown in red. Slide 6. The proposal is on plot 7. It will only be visible from the private road. So any dog walker seeing the proposal will go on to see plot 5 before entering the wood. Plot 5 house has similarities. However, only half the proposal will be seen because it is 10 metres behind a brow and has a boulder wall in front. Slide 7. Aesthetically, we saw the context as the flanking beech trees. They're only 100 years old and should last another 200. They're over 25 metres tall. Therefore, a slight vertical emphasis seemed appropriate. At the same time, this approach was a big step towards meeting the goals of MPF 4. It meant a reduction in the concrete footprint and the materials in general, whilst harnessing the efficiency from having heat rising through the building. Slide 8. The plot slopes down to the left. The green area is good building ground and the red area is made up. The southwest corner foundations will be 2.5 metres deep. Going wider will exponentially increase the concrete trenching or piling. We listened hard to the planners. We removed the Juliet balcony, we widened the house, we changed the colour, we reduced the roof pitch, and we moved the house further back into the woods. We're grateful for the input of planning. It was very helpful, and the amended proposal is the better for it. Slide 9. At 9 metres wide, not the 8.3 that may be a typo in the report, its front is not narrow, it's around UK average. The height, we were told from the start, was acceptable.
You have 30 seconds to go, David.
Okay, we tried to make it look good, and we've received quite a few compliments. 40 degrees is not a steep roof. Slide 9.9. We hope you'll consider that the amended proposal meets MPF4 and OP2 requirements in that it relates well to the surrounding area and respects physical and landscape features. If not, then that it is an exception to policy because of its low visual impact and taking into account the topography, that it is an appropriate design on a plot where the principle has already been established.
So that's 3 minutes up, David.
In either case, we would be happy to retain the trees as a condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Whistle stop tour, and thank you very much for that. Any questions for David? Councillor Beretti, followed by Councillor Drysdale.
Good morning, James. Just so if I can get my head around this again, I know there's been quite a few slides. The last one that you showed, is that the side that is facing directly south, or is it what is the orientation?
David?
So the last slide was looking up from the private road. It shows the elevation that looks south-southwest. And
right, southwest. So just let me interrupt you there. So I'm looking at this slide here now. It's obviously done on a day when it's winter because there's no leaves in the trees, and the shadow would say that you've done it sort of maybe in the morning at some stage, which is actually quite a good day. I don't know how you managed to get a good day. So that is the solar gain coming from winter on the face of that building. Is that right?
Yes, it's totally. You're totally correct. The good day is possible because we're the direct neighbours of this, so we're able to shoot out when the sun comes out. It does look south. It's our only open aspect at all, and we try to maximise the frontage, not minimise it. We're surrounded on 3 sides by what in the summer will be dense foliage.
Right. So, but this image was taken just very, very recently.
Absolutely, and it's all done to perfect scale. I did quite a lot of work to make that bang on.
Okay, right. Thanks very much, James. David, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Drysdale, please.
Hi, David. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions, if that's okay. MPF4 and policies going forward look a lot towards enhancing biodiversity and the nature of the places in which we live. We're all quite aware of that going forward, which is quite interesting. Having looked at Dalbeattie, and obviously, I don't know, you don't know this, but I am a big dog walker and spend quite a lot of time in Dalbeattie. And I think we all see the different types of designs that are coming forward into our society today. And across the region, we see dark timber buildings going up, pop-up builds, which are brought in from abroad, which don't really give us as much, pardon me, that's the coffee machine making a noise. So I think we need to be dynamic in the way we design and look towards our future. So the question I wanted to ask you was looking at the heritage of Dalbeattie in particular. We know that the heritage in this particular town is the grey granite, the lighter grey granite. And I just wondered if you could chat us through the fact that you looked at a darker grey, but yet you might be willing to compromise with a white. And to me, I think from a design perspective, it would make more sense to be a sort of lighter grey and white, or a combination of the two. But obviously that's only my opinion and it's not up to me to decide these things. But to me, that would make more use of the natural assets and the colour of the bark in the wintertime, were you to retain the trees, which of course is very important in this day and age. So it was just to get your opinions on that. Thanks for affording me the time, members. Thank you, David.
David?
Thank you. A little bit to unpack there. On the colour, I mean, I'm a developer these days, and I realise development can be quite impactful. We were in Andorra a year ago or so, and we noticed that we're building only in the same material that the mountains are made out of, and you could build forever there, and it wouldn't be objectionable. And my personal view is you're better to try and blend into the background, but you know, we're not stuck. If it must be white, it must be white. The actual darker colours probably take more sunlight into them and are better for solar gain as well. The meeting MPF 4, the more vertical house is a reduction in material use, both on the concrete footprint, the roof is smaller, and the heat goes through it better. On biodiversity, I would like to say we only had a requirement of 720 square metres on a site of several acres for biodiversity and open space nature areas. We've left a good acre with 4 ponds in it extra because we like the nature and looking at it. This site is half an acre in itself. The dance floor where we're making the building is, I think it's a quarter of that. We're leaving the rest as is.
Thank you, Pauline. If there are no other questions for Mr. James, David, thank you for coming forward. Members were in session. Councillor Thompson, Stephen Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I think my consideration with it, so obviously we've heard quite a lot of representations, and I think while it's vital that we get that understanding of how local people feel about certain things, I think we have to be careful that we're making decisions based on material planning grounds, and I think that's why we have this committee in the first place. So notwithstanding that, I think we've got a site here that's got an in-principle approval for development, and I think what we probably want to see is the right type of development coming forward that fits that. And I suppose for me, I'm still sort of mulling over, well, in terms of NPF 4, Policy 14 and OP2, how have we come to the judgment? So I appreciate there's a lot of 1.5 storey buildings in the vicinity, and this clearly isn't that. But then if we take it in the very local context from some of the images that we've seen, etc., can we say that all we're looking at is reducing it down to how many floors a building has, or are we actually looking at how it will look in the context once it's in place? So I think I'm kind of mulling that over myself just now, but just maybe to kick things off, that's kind of where I'm thinking at, Chair. So I'll look forward to hearing from other members. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there was a couple of issues that came out, and that is the fact that it is south facing, it is winter. I can understand why people might want a certain colour, but one of the things that struck me there was the fact that dark colours do absorb heat in winter. That is crucial for solar gain. If you paint something completely white, you're going to get the opposite effect. And I can understand why the orientation is the way it is, because again, with the windows, you're going to get a lot of solar gain in winter. Now, if our policy is to try and reduce carbon and go to net zero, we want to produce buildings that take into account all of these archaeological design features that promote that type of gain, rather than trying to just present blank walls. And I think from the way I see this building, they're the same as here, but why must we build buildings similar to ones that were built in the 1930s? And I think this has been something that the planning department, or we've seen this in planning quite a few times, where the house is put into a context, and because there are buildings there that have been there for 90 years, 100 years, 120, not necessarily should they need to fit in with that. This is a modern building in a modern context, Chair. So I would favour the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Barretti. And I know we've discussed a lot about the colour of the proposed development, but if you look at the recommended decision on page 27, it says quite clearly, the dwelling house in an elevated position do not relate well to the scale, character and appearance of the surrounding area, and it makes reference to the design, height and finishes of the proposed 2.5-storey dwelling. So it's not just about colour. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's really just to put the opposing view to Councillor Barretti. I'm of the view that, yeah, we shouldn't build houses as they were built back in the 1930s and such like. However, I do think it's important that things have a sense of place, and I think that's what the planning officer has suggested. I do feel that in this case that it wouldn't really fit in with what is the setting that's already there, and I would be mindful that it could be approved, but only if it were amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks for letting me in, Chair. A number of things I'd like to discuss. So, in my opinion, if you took a drive, potentially a site visit, I might recommend we go with that route. If you take a drive around Dalbeattie, you'll see a mix of what I call mid-grey to match the granite in that particular time, which is very much the heritage and history of Dalbeattie, mixed in with white houses, which is very much the history and heritage of the whole of Galloway, especially in the west. But also you will see some quite dynamic houses across the whole area currently being built, which meet our carbon targets and the way that we are expected to live, quite rightly so, in this day and age. If you drive through Dalbeattie and down the coast, you'll see quite a lot of similar designs to the one that we see in front of us today. Now, I know the argument is the fact that the scale density and massing is not suitable, but obviously we need to consider that it's sitting up on a hill and is well screened by other houses. And in the future, that will be potentially become a family home for somebody at some point. However, what I would like to discuss with members and have their opinions on it is the fact that, to me, a mid-grey, not a dark grey, which still absorbs heat and holds heat, or white, but preferably a mid-grey, in my opinion, is the way that these new houses are being built, quite rightly so nowadays. But that would be my opinion, obviously, and I need to listen to other members. To me, the appearance is quite attractive, and the materials seem sympathetic to the local build forms, i.e. mixing with the old and the new. However, what I do have concerns with is I would like to condition in, if possible, the retention of trees, as to me that's very important because it's so close to the forest, which we all love and know. And I'd also like to condition in some system through planning, and that would be decision planning would have to make the SEPA with regards to the water coursing and the sewage works, or whatever the words are there, to ensure that neighbouring properties do not experience any flooding, as we're seeing that across the area with some of the new builds, and we're dealing with that on a weekly basis. So it was just to ask if we could condition in that through yourself, David, as planning officer. So that's my opinions, and I'm happy to hear other members. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Hislop. So a number of observations, but maybe we're needing a determination. Councillor Hislop, please.
Chair, when we first saw this, I think 2.5 stories, this looks a bit high. But when you actually see the slides that were presented by the applicant, Mr. James, there was one of a currently built house which showed about 1.5 stories, maybe gable end facing the road. And then you had the mock-up at the end of what the house would look like based on accurate drawings. Didn't see much more of the gable end facing outwards in that one than you did in the other ones. So I'm more to the stage where I find it's moving to being acceptable because of the way it's going to be orientated. You're also getting the gains through your solar colours. I think the mid-grey colour is what I would like to see. White is going to make it stand out. It always does. That was one of the things that we were told. You want something to stand out, paint it white and the rest green, white will stand out. So a grey would, I think, camouflage it more in the background. So likewise, I'm of the opinion that this could be accommodated in that site. As for policies and how to actually put that in, I always find it difficult if it's whether it should be there or not. It's usually black or white, but this is more subjective. Somebody can look at it and say, no, it shouldn't be there. Somebody else can look at it and say, yes, it fits in. And I find subjective forms of words more difficult to sort of come together. If it was acceptable to do an exception to policy, that's what we used to do in the olden days. I don't know if we can do that now. I don't find that the scaling would be unacceptable in that site. The colour, I think, is more acceptable being mid-grey rather than the charcoal grey. I don't think I would have liked that. I think that would have been unacceptable, and the white would have been unacceptable, but I think the grey would be better. But as for whether that's sufficient to cover the policy reasons, I don't know. But that's what I would like to think we would look at.
Thanks, Councillor. I'd be concerned if applicants showing us pictures allow us to decide on an application because you haven't seen the context in the location in comparison to what the proposal is. So I'd be concerned about a few pictures suggesting that would allow us to determine whether or not an application is acceptable or not. But I'm in members' hands. I don't have a proposal yet, and certainly it would have to be a proposal that fitted with council policy. Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I was looking at, and there's a bit of detail in terms of NPF 14 around the 6 qualities of successful places. And I think it goes on about being healthy, pleasant, connected, distinctive, sustainable, and adaptable. And on some of these elements, the development would arguably could contribute, and another it doesn't quite fit. So in terms of connectivity or distinctive, but then you could argue, well, maybe depends on the specific context. Is it a creative use of how to maybe use modern development to fit in with what's already there? So it's still very much in the balance, but while we saw the presentation from the developer on screen, I think it would need more than that, as you're suggesting, I think, to maybe make a sort of sound decision. So if it might require a site visit just so we get a proper sense of context. If that's going to be the stumbling block in terms of whether or not it fits with what's there in a sensitive way to the landscape, then I'd be happy to move a site visit if that's going to help us bottom that out. Because at the moment we're seeing slides that could sway us one way or the other, and at the end of the day they're just photographs or artist's impressions, if you like. So I'd be happy to move a site visit.
Thanks for that proposal, Councillor Thompson. I have 2 speakers, Councillor Drysdale and Barretti. If one of you are going to second Councillor Thompson, that will be adequate. The other doesn't need to speak. I'll just see if there's an alternative view. And I see Councillor Slater with his hand up as well. So Drysdale first, then Barretti, and then Slater. And if any of the 3 support that proposal, I will only then ask for an alternative view, and then we'll go to the vote, or else we'll establish that we're having a site visit. Councillor Drysdale, please.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. Yes, I would like to second Councillor Thompson's site visit in order that we as members can see the surrounding area, materials used, and the spatial qualities as is in the report, and then we will be able to see the other buildings that are in the area as well. So I would second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So a proposer and a seconder of that nature stops debate unless there's an alternative view. Is anyone of the view that they have enough information before them to determine the application today? In that case, we've deemed to have a site visit. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to say I would recommend a site visit as well. Thank you.
You're going to, Councillor, you got a second?
Yes, yes.
You're too late, that's what I said. We've got a seconder. We're not going to debate on that. Debate stops unless you want to decide it today without a site visit.
I'm fine. Thank
Thank you. So we have unanimous decision that we have a site visit. That will be arranged and with Case Officer. Mr. Sutty, anything to add?
No, Chair. We'll just make arrangements with Fiona to try and find a gap in the council diary.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't determined anything today. You're free to leave if you wish. We will arrive on a site visit at some time in the future. You can stay and watch the rest of the meeting if you wish. If not, I'll give you a couple of minutes to retire. Members, move on to agenda item number 5, an application for the erection of 2 dwelling houses at land adjacent to Newark, Old Military Road, Milton. The application type is planning permission in principle, reference number 24/2295/PIP. Recommendation is refusal, and our case officer is Claire Ingram. Claire, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of 2 dwelling houses at land adjacent to Newark, Old Military Road in Milton. Under the scheme of delegation, the application requires to be considered by the Planning Applications Committee on the basis that it's been called in by Councillor Bell on material planning grounds. So our first slide here is our site location plan. We've got a 1 to 1250 and on the right hand side, and our block plan of 1 to 500 on the left hand side, indicating the proposal site outlined in red to the southern portion of the plan. The site is situated to the south of the Milton Small Building Group, with the dwellings at Iona and Newark Farm to the north of the proposed site. The block plan indicates the 2 dwelling houses accessed by a shared new access off the Old Military Road. As this is a planning and principle application, we'll just move on to the photos now. Slide 3. This photo is taken from the north corner of the site, looking southwest along the Old Military Road. The next one is looking north towards Iona and Newark from the southern boundary of the site. The next one indicating the southwest corner of the site at the junction of the Old Military Road. This one is looking north towards the western boundary of the site. We can see the band of mature trees just in the front of Newark Farm there. Again, the next one looking to the north-northeast site boundary from the Old Military Road. And the final photo here is looking towards the southeast corner of the site. I'll just bring us back to the site layout there. So what I would say is this is a planning and principle application for the erection of 2 dwelling houses. The application site is situated outside of the settlement boundary. So the principle of the proposal has been considered under MPF 4 Policy 17 and LDP 2 Policy H3 and the supplementary guidance. LDP 2 has been given greater weight in the determination of this application. However, it's noted that MPF Policy 17A does require that developments must be suitably scaled, sited and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. So we're looking at Policy H3 to do with housing proposals to be within or well related to a small building group on the list contained in our supplementary guidance, and Milton is identified as the relevant small building group. We can see Milton just to the north, sort of the northeast on the location plan there. The 2 plots are proposed to a field to the southwest of Newark Farm. The frontage extends some 70 metres from the boundary wall of Newark Farm to the junction of the Old Military Road, the C1S with the C5S public road. The fields to the south and east of Newark Farm are open and appear to be used for grazing. The level of the land drops gently to the south. There's a dry stone wall at the junction of the C1S and the C5S. The existing natural topographical stop to the small building group of Milton is the wall and the band trees at Newark Farm. And the development of the proposal site would be remote from the nucleus of Milton, as the natural topographical stop is as detailed as above. The formation of ribbon development into the open countryside further away from the nucleus of the small building group would not accord with the supplementary guidance on small building groups. The site has no natural or man-made backdrop to the southeast and remains open to the larger agricultural field. The dwelling at Iona has no stop or wall, potentially allowing increased ribbon development along towards Bridgestone. MPF policy 16F 3 states that proposals will be supported if they are consistent with the policy in rural homes, and in this case the proposal is contrary to LDB2 policy H3. It is considered that the proposal is contrary to the development plan policies on housing in the countryside set out in NPF 4 policy 16 and 17, and in particular LDP2 policy H3 and the adopted supplementary guidance in respect of small building groups. There are no material considerations which outweigh these policy issues, and accordingly, in line with section 25 of the Act, planning permission is recommended for refusal for this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions for our case officer? And Keith Walters, please. Councillor Walters.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just about on page 34, the on 4.11, there's some text about the need for a natural stop of the small buildings group, and it says that there isn't one as such. When I looked at the map, the road that runs along the bottom of the map, that would seem to be a natural stop as well. And it says in the thing that's quoted, it says it must be an established hedge, tree belt, or woodland, dry stone dyke or road. So I'm interested as to know why you've decided that the hedge is a natural stop, but the road, which is further down, which would be the edge of the site, wouldn't be considered as a natural stop. Thanks.
Claire.
If I could just bring back on the site location plan, please. Yeah, so what I have referred to as the natural stop within this small building group of Milton, there's a mature band of trees just to the southwest of New York Farm. I can kind of see the band there. The nucleus of the small building group of Milton, it's quite difficult to see from the location plan there, but it's to the northeast. It's around a crossroads to the northeast. So stating that the road to the southwest of this as being the natural stop, it's very remote from the nucleus of the small building group. The band of trees would be the more natural topographical stop for this particular small building group. Thank you.
Content with that, Councillor Walters?
Yeah, I suppose it's the difference between what there is at the moment and what there could be if this development was allowed, because it would be a natural stop otherwise. But yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Keith. Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this, it's just a wee bit of maybe clarity around 4.6 when the report speaks about small building groups and highlights that difference between NPF 4 and our own LDP 2. And then in terms of the recommended decision, it sort of puts them all together in a oneer. I'm just sort of wondering, are there two separate things here in a sense? Because under NPF 4, and this is maybe me just wrestling with NPF 4 and LDP 2 again, but so you could say NPF 4 and policy H3 are naturally sort of sit together in that sense, but the small building groups, which isn't referred to in NPF 4, there's a second part which is like we would consider buildings that relate well to a small building group, almost to give that weight quite sort of separately from NPF 4 as far as I can see. I'm just sort of wondering, would any of the officers be able to speak to that? Because I'm trying to just make sense of that. There seem to be two slightly separate things that are obviously related in this case because both might apply in some way, but there seems to be a slight distinction there for me, and I'm just wondering if that should be set out like that.
I'll ask Mr. Sutty to help you, Stephen, if he can.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the issues are set out quite well in paragraph 4.6 because, as you'll be aware, we've now got two parts to the development plan. LDP2 is the older one, but has a long-established line of council policy in respect to small building groups. Perhaps unhelpfully, NPF 4 does not have a specific policy in it that allows housing in the countrysides in small building groups. That is our own local policy. And that's why I think in this instance, we think this LDP2 policy, H3, and particularly the small building group supplementary guidance is actually of more relevance. It doesn't go against the policy intent within policy 17, and indeed the last line makes it very clear that it does still require developments to be a suitable scale, siting and design, designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. So it does sort of tie back into LDP2. I think we've made it clear as well that for LDP3, we recognise that there's going to need to be a local policy which will complement policy 17 in NPF 4 to try and round that off, because at the moment there is that slight tension there, which I do accept.
Stephen, you want to come back? Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thanks, Chair. No, that's helpful, David. And I think it's maybe, will we start to see recommendations that say the proposal is contrary to NPF 4 and then LDP, so will we be considering them, everything under the auspices of NPF 4, and then, but we'll have local things to say within that, where we've got that space within that sort of framework, so that we're considering against the overarching policy, then local policy, and then whatever the specific might be. Thank you.
That sound right, David?
The development plan is still one entity, so even although there's two documents within it, the development plan, as we have to pay attention to under section 25, is one thing. There's two elements to it, which is where we're, I think, all still slightly wrestling, even a couple of years on, with how to marry the two together. But hopefully LDP3 will round that off.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for our case officer, we'll invite our last speaker for today, Katie Wallace of McGowan Miller, the applicant's agent who's with us in person. Katie, I'm sure you've been watching with interest the process. I'll invite you to do your 3-minute presentation. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw it to a conclusion, and you'd be kind enough to wait until members have questions for you. I'd be grateful. Whenever you're ready, Katie, thank you.
Chairperson, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the planning and principle application for the construction of 2 dwelling houses situated within the small building group of Milton. By way of background, the agent responsible for the design of this application has a long-standing engagement and is unfortunately unable to attend this meeting. Therefore, I have been asked to assist by presenting the following statement. This proposal has been meticulously considered to ensure it aligns with the local development plan and the supplementary guidance for the housing in the countryside, specifically addressing the criteria for new houses and small building groups. Firstly, the proposed development is sensitively sited to respect the natural topographical features of the land, which includes the prominent dry stone dyke, which is an established boundary. This natural feature not only defines the limits of the development, but also enhances the rural character of the area, thus ensuring minimal visual impact and maintaining the aesthetic continuity of the surrounding landscape. The junction of the C1S and C5S roads offers a logical and natural boundary for the proposed dwellings, reinforcing their integration into the existing building group and representing the spatial patterns. This positioning adheres to the guidance outlined in the housing in the countryside policy, which advocates for developments that do not intrude upon the open countryside and use existing natural and built boundaries to create a coherent settlement group. Moreover, the application underscores our commitment to sustainable development. The proposed dwelling houses will be designed to complement the existing architectural styles with sympathetic materials and construction techniques, ensuring that the new homes blend seamlessly within their environment. This not only preserves the character of the small building groups, but also enhances it by adding quality housing that meets current and future needs. The strategic location of the proposed development also offers several benefits for the community. It provides an opportunity for local investment and job creations during the construction phase, contributing to the local economy. Additionally, the new dwellings will provide much needed housing options, accommodating families with preference of a rural life, rural job. In conclusion, the planning application is a responsible and thoughtfully planned proposal that aligns with the supplementary guidance for housing in the countryside. By respecting the natural topographical features and adhering to the boundaries defined by the Drystane Dyke and road junctions, this development complies with the housing in the countryside policy.
You have 30 seconds to go.
We believe that this proposal will enhance the small building group of Milton, contributing positively to the community and the local landscape. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Katie. Any questions for the applicant's agent? Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned a line in there about rural homes, rural jobs, I think, or something along those lines. But, I mean, anybody could live in the house working in an urban job, for example. I just sort of wondered, was that an aspirational thing, or is that something you would set as a condition for anybody living there?
I must apologise. McGowan Miller have only been instructed to read this rewritten statement. I have no knowledge to answer any questions on this behalf.
No worries, thank you.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Thanks very much, Katie. Members, we're in session. No proposals, go to the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hislop and then Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Chair, normally I would have backed this as a rounding off of a development because it ended up as at the road junction. However, my concern is it would encourage rounding off at the other side, and there's no natural boundary at the other side. If the road had been going the other way with a dike where this is, I might have tried to find some policy reason for it, but I find that it's going to encourage people to bring in applications for the other side of the road, which I don't think does equate well with the village setting. So I would move the officer's recommendations.
You're proposing we go with the officer's recommendation. I'm content with that, Councillor Hislop. I'll second it. Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Basically, to maybe not for quite the same reasons in terms of the rounding off, but just there's nothing presented that suggests we should go against existing policy, so I would just go with the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no alternative views, it's a unanimous decision of the committee. Can you just record the decision, Tracy, please?
Thanks, Chair. Members have refused the application on the grounds detailed in the report.
Thanks very much, Tracy. We move on to the last agenda item, an application for the erection of a dwelling house Class 9 and formation of vehicular access onto C44A Public Road at Plot 4, Windmore Green, Creeka, Annan. Its full application, reference number 24/2515/full, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Rachel Lightfoot is going to take us through a presentation, and I have a few clarifications that I'll ask Mr. Sutty to make. You want to make them first or after Rachel's presentation, David?
I'll just go first if that's okay, Chair. Yes, as you'll be aware, it's an item which is not for speaking, in that there's no actual objectors to it. But nonetheless, one of the applicants has been in touch to raise some issues about a few points in the report, and I spoke to him yesterday afternoon. Some are just for clarification, and others have probably more implications. The first one, just for clarity, is we always refer to our previous history, so Plot 3 is what we've regarded the property as. But just to draw to members' attention, on page 39, the location plan, you've got the Birdhouse, is the house that lies immediately to the southeast. That is Plot 3. It has been built out. So when we refer to Plot 3, that is the Birdhouse on your plan. The second point is to do with paragraph 1.2, where the last line says, to the rear of the site is agricultural land with residential uses to the remaining boundaries. That actually is not quite correct. Again, if you go back to page 39, you'll notice Windmore Green is the property that lies immediately to the southwest, and it's beyond that property that you've got the agricultural land. So I'm happy to correct that it is immediately to the southwest of Winmore Green that is agricultural land, not immediately to the application site. The other issue which was raised was concerned about condition 3, and specifically the requirement for an acoustic fence. As the slides that Rachel will show shortly will demonstrate, a recent fence has been erected along the boundary with Winmore Green. Now, whilst it is not an acoustic fence, there was a query as to whether or not it was reasonable or necessary to go and require that existing new fence to be ripped out to put an acoustic fence in, when the property of Winmore Green effectively acts as a buffer in between the industrial uses at Creeka and the proposed house. I've looked at that, and whilst I do recognise that the chief noise activity in the area is, or was, Creeka Sawmill, that closed and was removed from the site, I believe, about 2021. We have consistently applied, as officers and at the committee, this requirement for what's effectively worded in condition 3, consistently on every planning permission. I do accept that there is a new fence that has gone in there, and because of the buffer with Winmore Green, it perhaps is not necessary for the fence. But because this is a two-storey house, which is being proposed, and there really aren't many two-storey houses in Creeka, the upper floor is still going to be subject to the other existing Class 5 general industrial activities in the area. So I'm happy to put forward an amendment to the condition 3, which really just deletes the reference to the fence, but does still require the acoustic glazing ventilation system within the property just to protect its amenity. That's all I had to say, but I'm happy to answer any queries that members might have before Rachel starts.
Thank you, Mr. Sutty. If members are satisfied with the clarification provided with Mr. Sutty or by Mr. Sutty, we'll move on to Rachel's presentation. Rachel, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm taking this one just to give Claire a little break. This application is brought before you as the applicant is a member of the authority. The application is for an amended house type on plot 4 of this development at Creeka. You can see outlined in red. The amendment would result in a 1.5 storey dwelling becoming 2, and no representations have been received. As you can see, as David has already touched on, to the rear of the site you have Winmore Green. Apologies for it referring to agricultural land. The block plan shows the bird house that we refer to as plot 3 and existing housing to our remaining boundaries. There you can just see in a little more detail the house that has been built on plot 3 and the relationship to the adjacent dwellings. This is the proposed elevations for the new development, its floor plans, and then looking into the site you can see the bird house to the left of the picture, hopefully, if I've got my directions correct. Looking inside the site to the fence that David referred to the rear, then looking across the site towards the northwest and back across the site towards the northeast. As David's already touched on, which I will not keep you any longer, the requirement for the condition has been requested on all previous apps, but we can make an amendment to that one. Following that amendment to the condition, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions for our case officer? Does not appear so. In that case, we're in session, members. Are we happy to go with the officer's recommendation and conditions proposed, including the changes that Mr. Sutty has discussed with you today? Everyone in the room is nodding acceptance. If there are no alternative views online.
No, I'm fine with that, Chair. That's Councillor Beretti.
Thanks very much. I have Councillor Slater, an alternative view. Microphone, please.
Just to say I'd go with the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Thanks, Chair. Members have approved the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report, with the amendment to condition 3 to remove the requirement for the acoustic fence.
Thank you, Tracy. That concludes our business for today. Thank you much, officers and members and staff, for being here, and have a good day in the sunshine. Thank you. That's meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.